Lowe's knows that free is just better. That's why MyLowe's Rewards is free to join. As a member, you earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases, get exclusive free gifts, and earn free shipping at Silver Key status, all on top of weekly member-only deals. Don't wait. Join MyLowe's Rewards for free today and start saving more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
You know, some people say that Odoo business management software is like fertilizer, the way it promotes growth and all. But other people say Odoo is like a magic beanstalk because it grows with your company and is also magically affordable. And there's some people who would even say Odoo's individual software programs come together to build the perfect suite like building blocks. Well, Odoo is all of these things. Fertilizer, magic beanstalk, building blocks for business. So sign up now at odoo.com. ODOO.com.
No, it's about midwives, I guess.
Midwives? Is that the wife between first and third? What's that referred to?
I think so. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
E.T. phone home.
Jesus Christ, what is that thing?
It's E.T. Holy shit.
E.T. isn't real? What the fuck?
That looks like fucking E.T. right there.
Got you guys.
What the hell did you do to yourself, Eli? You look worse than usual.
Oh, I'm E.T.
That's not a costume. That's, I don't know what that is. What? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I got a surgery guy.
That sounds like what that is.
Yeah. He took a few vertebrae out of my lower spine, put them in my neck.
It looks painful, man.
So painful.
Oh my God, Cecil, you have no idea. He also took my forearm bones out and made them into my fingers.
Yeah, that's a horror to look at.
Yeah. Well, if it's a horror to look at, you should feel what it feels like, Tom. Let me
no
tell you.
No thanks, man. No, pass. God. Hard pass.
Oh, maybe, honestly, this was not such a great idea. It hurts. It hurts so much, but it might be worth it because this week's show is about the E.T. video game. And you guys have to play with me now.
Yeah, they buried that fucking game in the desert.
Yeah, they did.
They did? Okay, not my best idea.
Nope, not your best.
I'll get those shovels again.
Hurry.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because it's the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm just a casual observer here, and I'll be hosting tonight, but I'm not alone. First up, two men who are dying just to have a little bit of ethics in gaming journalism, Noah and he.
No. And by ethics, we mean penises, obviously.
Yeah,
that
right.
phrase is normally employed. Yeah.
Also, apropos of nothing, Ben Shapiro's wife called him a wet vagina as a disease. Keep going. Mention that again.
Also joining us tonight, two guys who have buried a lot of inanimate objects, Tom and Eli.
John?
Okay.
She
would
no.
She was still animate.
Pro tip, the order of operations there doesn't matter as much as you might think. At the end, it's all the same.
Folks, I know we talk a lot about Eli's potentially starving child, but did you realize Noah needs to get high or he can't stand to talk to any of us long enough to podcast? If you'd like to learn how to buy Noah happy plants, be sure to stick around till the end of the show.
Yeah, don't take it personally, guys. That's true of all non-feline entities. It's not.
And with that out of the way, tell us, Tom, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
We will be talking about the Atari video game burial.
Okay, and Noah, you're still clearly pissed off about an 8-bit game that disappointed you 38 years ago. Are you ready to finally get this off your chest, man?
Okay, it was when I describe the fucking game, you'll understand why. Yes. Anybody paying attention to my topic selection on this show knows that three of my favorite passions are video games, 80s history, and fucking disasters.
Yeah. Not to be confused with disastrous fucking, which I can confirm Noah is not a fan.
Don't send me a fucking video if you don't want notes.
Okay, Noah, laughing face emojis are not useful notes. I wish you'd stop.
I feel like you got the message. Okay. Anyway,
Still hurtful.
Video games, 80s, disasters. It was never a question of if I would do an episode about the E.T. video game for Atari. It was a question of when I would do that episode. And the answer is now. And you know why? Because America finally deserves it. You've earned it, the electorate.
Okay, I voted for TurboGrafx 16, and that's what I wanted. But, other side of the coin, now they're going to get campaign funding next time.
Yeah.
So, positive.
All right. So this story starts with the godfather of video games, Nolan Bushnell. Nolan Bushnell is largely credited with creating the video game industry after he had this idea for a TV tennis game and invented Pong. And by invented, I mean described the idea to an engineer he'd hired. And by had an idea for, I mean saw an early prototype of some other company's TV tennis game.
Back when intellectual property was a square and 2 rectangles. Nice. Nice.
Oh, okay. So now we can't steal ideas and hire people to repackage them without some judgy McJudgerson getting involved. God, I hate judges. Just never.
Right? This thing's so much harder.
mean.
Never.
Like since Heath's Gregor episode, man, I've really gotten a hate for judges. It's been tough. So, no, this is not quite as direct a ripoff as I'm making it sound, but it's at least a 6 figures worth of out of court settlement level of ripoff. Regardless of how it happened, though, Bushnell comes up with Pong, or rather, Al Alcorn, the engineer that he hired, comes up with Pong. And they have a working model that's super fun to play. So they mount it in a makeshift cabinet, slap a coin box on it, and test market it at a bar called Andy Capp's Tavern in Sunnyvale, California. This story is famous. The next day, they get a call that the machine's broken. So Alcorn rushes over to see what the hell happened, right? He's super worried. Turned out, so goddamn many people had crammed quarters into the box that it was full and you couldn't shove more quarters into it. So he fills his toolbox with some of the quarters, tells him it's fixed, and he leaves.
The owner's like, I'll fix it myself next time.
All right, so within a few days, word got around that there were lines of people waiting to play this game when the bar opened up every day.
Man, that is some aggressive word of mouth, though. Like, hey, you hear you can play electric tennis over at Andy Capp's Tavern? Whoa, electric tennis. Now my day drinking has purpose. What?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It already has a purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so on the success of Pong, Bushnell starts the company that would define the 80s more than any other.
Cocaine Incorporated.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, yeah, but actually, yes, but they called it Atari. But of course, if you live by the hire a smart guy to rip off somebody else's idea, you die by the hire a smart guy to rip off somebody else's idea. And it wasn't long before every amusement company in the country was cranking out Pong clones. Now, Atari managed to recapture some of this magic with a home version of Pong, but the same thing happened there, and pretty soon there were so many manufacturers churning out the same product that there wasn't enough profit to keep anybody afloat.
Then they launched Patreon.com, and the rest was history, man. Just the rest was history.
All right. So Nolan Bushnell went back to what he does best, paying better engineers to rip off other people's ideas. And this time, he stole the idea of the Fairchild Channel F. See, by then, TV games had been around a couple of years, but they were dedicated systems. Like, you bought a game that you could hook to the back of your TV.
It was an interesting time. Some mom would just be like, honey, why does your friend have a welding mask and torch for the sleepover?
You're right. Yeah,
You're
exactly.
10.
Yeah.
You know what? Whatever. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
This Atari, I don't know how that works.
Simpler times.
Anyway, so you had that one game. You played it until you got bored. Then you had to buy a whole nother system to hook to your TV. The Channel F was the first game system to employ interchangeable cartridges.
I mean, we laugh, but at this point, our Nintendo Switches are basically just our wives' Animal Crossing machines. So I wouldn't say we've gotten that far.
Okay, no,
We
that's
know
fair.
illusions.
That's fair. Okay, so the Channel F was crazy innovative, but it had one big problem. It was utter shit. Right? Like, the games just fucking sucked. The novelty of being able to move a thing on your TV with a little stick was expected to do a ton of the heavy lifting, right? So it didn't have a killer app. It didn't even have like a serious wounder app, but Atari already had all the hottest games in the arcade going for it. So when they set about creating their own cartridge-based system, they designed it to be exactly as powerful as it would need to be to play their hit game Breakout, and not one fucking molecule of silicon more than that.
I'd love to be in that pitch meeting for the system. What about if we take all the fun of watching colored bricks disappear and bring that excitement home?
No way.
Oh, yes, but wait, there's more.
There is?
No.
Wait, I thought you just said.
You'll buy it anyway.
Yeah.
Atari, it's either us or talk to your wife.
She should be more interesting. It's her fault.
Whatever, fuck you guys. I'm gonna go invent Apple computers and have it stolen by Steve Jobs. I hate you.
Yeah, exactly. Damn you, Heath, for dangling that tangent in front of me. Must push past it. So the end result of that effort is the Atari 2600. Now, you might be thinking, 2600 what, Noah? Well, go fuck yourself.
No,
it's
wasn't.
not 2600 anything.
Mm-mm.
In fact, it wasn't even called that at the time. It was actually rebranded as the Atari 2600 when they released the Atari 5200 as a way of saying that this new console was twice as good as the old one. But the numbers don't refer to anything at all. Retro gamers pretty much all call it the 2600 now, which is why I'm using the name. But when it was first sold, it was called the Atari Video Computer System, or Atari VCS. And even that is only what you'd call it if you were like a store owner ordering some on the phone. If you were a customer or like coming into that store asking for one, you just called it an Atari.
So the 5200 is like the popular vote. Doesn't matter what the number is, no matter what.
Exactly. Yes.
No, do I understand you right? Is that they started numbering it at the 5200?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then went back
That's a
and called
rant. Why wouldn't they call it the 2?
Because Commodore 64 was out at that point, and they wanted
They
to sound
needed a number
way better than
64?
Exactly, way bigger number. Yeah. So that's literally
What's
why.
a bigger number than 64? Shout him out, guys. 5,200.
He's a go-getter. I like that, Bill. 5,200.
Holy
Fuck you,
shit.
Joe, with your 128. We're going 52.
It's not even a pound. It's fine. We want to just
yeah, right.
6,000? What am I made of fucking money over here, Greg? Fuck you, 6,000.
Also not a power of 2. What are you guys talking about? We're doing 128.
I didn't say prime numbers. What's wrong with you?
That's not a prime. It's fine.
Now, as much as I'd love to drill into the specs on the
you
Atari
should.
2600,
It'd be
I have
amazing.
been warned not to poke the Tom.
No, don't worry, Noah. You lost me at video games.
Oh,
I was
good.
just half.
This entire series has just been to like try to put you to sleep to get you on an airplane, a la Mr. T. You know. So okay. So I won't say much, but I have to say this. Okay, the Atari 2600, the gaming console that defined the 80s and kicked off the largest entertainment industry in the history of the world, had 128 bytes of RAM.
It's amazing.
Wait.
Yes, you heard that right, and I said that right. I did not mean to say kilo before that, or even cento. I'm talking about bytes. And for those of you who don't know what that means, given a standard character set to work with, 128 bytes would be almost enough memory to write this fucking sentence.
Coincidentally, also the amount of data the brain uses to store where you put your fucking keys.
Airplane food, right?
Yeah, so just for context,
That's so mean. So mean.
in order to watch
was so
one
mean.
frame of 4K video,
I will kill you.
that's about 1/60th of a second on a modern TV. In
Uh-huh.
order to watch one frame, you'd need about 70,000 Atari 2600s.
Jesus Christ.
And to watch the rest of that 1 second of your movie, you'd need about 4 million more Atari 2600s.
Right, yes.
About right.
You'd still be short by a little bit.
Yeah.
Holy
Nice.
shit.
Despite having less than 1/4 millionth of a movie second worth of RAM, the Atari 2600 was a fucking phenomenon. It was released in 1977, sold over 250,000 units in its first year. In 1979, they sold over 1 million. And that's just the systems, right? The whole point of the cartridge model was that the real money would be made selling the individual games. And by 1980, between the games and the consoles, Atari brought in over $2 billion. Over $7 billion in today's money. It was, at the time, the fastest growing company in the history of the U.S.
Man, the only way they could have sold more would be to time their launch for Christmas in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, right.
Be.
But there was a
Cynical.
problem brewing. Or actually, there were so goddamn many problems brewing. But we're going to deal with just the one for the moment. See, the company was making literal billions, but the programmers were making 20 grand a year. Okay, so Atari sent around this letter at one point to all the employees. It's kind of like a, look how badass our company is letter. And it set out the individual earnings on a per game basis. And some of those programmers started looking at this shit and they're like, huh, so that game that I was entirely responsible for creating made $20 million and I got 1,000th of that. That's weird.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Turns out that's still how capitalism works, though. I mean, it hasn't really changed much.
Right.
Actually, it'd be great if that's how capitalism works.
Yeah, but so 4 disgruntled programmers go to the boss, but the boss isn't Nolan Bushnell anymore. He'd signed a deal with Time Warner to secure funding for the 2600 launch, and that left them in control of the company. Then he got pushed out in favor of this dude, Ray Kassar. And Kassar was a fucking textiles guy, knew fuck all about programming or engineering or video games.
Textiles guy?
Yeah, it had no knowledge going into this.
Nice.
So
Do we have a cloth guy who can head up the new Atari division?
is exactly the decision that was made at Time Warner. Yeah. So they come in, they demand that they be credited with the games that they create and get a commission on each unit that's sold, which is fucking eminently reasonable. Right? But Kassar told him to fuck off. So the 4 programmers told him to fuck off back. They went off to start their own software company with beer and hookers, and they called it Activision. And right after it was founded, within months, it would take Atari's title as the fastest growing company in American history.
Damn.
Yeah. And this was back when you had to tackle a guy for loot boxes. So they really
You actually had to mail in pictures of your high scores. They'd send you patches.
They're all excited, and we've seized the means of production. Okay, I guess it's just this computer that we carried outside. Kind of hoping that'd be a little more impactful. All right. Well, let's hire some programmers to exploit, I guess, right?
And to this day, yeah, right. Okay, but this left Atari in a pretty fucked up position, right? The 2600 was notoriously hard to program. They just lost a few of their best and most experienced guys. And what's more, they now had to compete with another company in the market that they created, and that other company didn't have to incur any of the costs involved in actually designing and manufacturing a fucking game system. But Atari wasn't afraid of a little competition, especially after their lawsuit failed and it became clear that they weren't going to be able to stop Activision in court. They weren't.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's always funny to me how big business wants unfettered capitalism until they lose control of it, and then suddenly they want to fetter the shit out of their capitalism.
You want to fetter it? No. Taxes and unions are fucking part of capitalism. That's labor competing back.
Yep.
You guys are all assholes.
Exactly. Right.
Tell your Uncle Frank at your shitty Zoom Thanksgiving.
Okay, so look, Activision was, at the time, the pinnacle of quality gaming, or home gaming at least, right? Their games were more polished, more complete, and more fun than anything else going. I mean, the best of Atari's in-house games were at least as good. But with Activision, you basically knew you were going to get a high-quality game. With Atari, total crapshoot.
Okay, kids, do you want Dungeon Quest or Boop Beep?
Yeah, really, that was the choice. Of course, what started with higher...
Boop Beep!
Yeah, we always got fucking Boop Beep. All right, so what started with higher quality games led to the opposite. By and large, nobody knew if they were getting a fucking Atari-made game or an Activision-made game or one by any number of other startup software developers. That, along with a couple of high-profile misses, would put the entire industry on a course to crash back to Earth so fucking hard they would wind up underground.
Well, we've gotten to this weird place where workers seize the means of production by putting each other in headlocks. So let's take a quick break for a little apropos of nothing.
Gentlemen, I called the board of Smithson Electronics together because this new video game thing is here to stay.
But boss, we ain't never made nothing creative.
Yeah, we make cathode ray tubes.
And the finest damn copper wire in the nation.
I know, but that just ain't enough anymore. Now, we need to make games for people to play. So who's got an idea?
What about sports? Like, maybe people would want to play soccer or football in a game?
They could go out and play the real thing in the sunshine and everything. Don't be absurd. Ridiculous.
All right. What about something that involves fantasy and time travel about a kid trying to save a princess who everybody's going to think is like his name, but it's actually the princess's name. And that's
Okay,
very
enough out of
obvious.
you. Too high concept. You lost me. Next.
Oh, I got one. Maybe a game about an Italian who beats the shit out of a bunch of turtles.
What? What are you saying?
No, stupid. Sorry. Somebody else
Guys,
go.
these are terrible. Ideas. We need something that's going to last, something that people want to play in 10 years, 50, 100 years.
Okay, how about boop beep? The block moved a little on the screen. What do you say?
Genius. Yes, let's dedicate the whole
Boop
company
beep.
to it.
Call
Yeah, I
boop beep.
agree.
I like boop beep.
Hooray!
Boop beep's a good
Sorry.
name.
Boop beep. Wait, beep boop.
No, boop beep. It's the other way around. Boop beep.
Boop beep.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Sorry, an Italian guy who beats up turtles?
It's so he could fuck a lady.
Not better. Not better.
He's Italian.
I don't know more now.
Well, when we left off, workers at Atari had to pee in bottles so they didn't take up too much time away from coding. When are they going to bury their games in the litter box, Noah? When's that going to happen?
All right. Okay, so we're almost there. So the year is 1982. Video games are everywhere. Ms. Pac-Man, Galaga, and Q*bert were raking in money at the arcades, and Atari was still the king of the console. But there was a ton of money to be made, and everybody wanted in. Basically, every company that had ever soldered a goddamn wire was hopping into this growing market. So a consumer heading to the store for a video game system was confronted with a glut of systems. So in addition to the 2600, you also had the Intellivision, the ColecoVision, the Vectrex, the Odyssey 2, Astrocade, CreativeVision, Arcadia 2001, and the Channel F2. Not to mention home computers like the Atari 400, Atari 800, TRS-80, VIC-20, and Commodore 64. And since pretty much everything I just mentioned is significantly more powerful than the Atari 2600, Atari also put out its own 5200 to compete with the higher-end systems. So they were competing with 100 different companies, including themselves.
So, podcasting.
Stop.
Yeah.
No. There was still money to be made in video games at that point. So,
All right, but it wasn't just that there was a glut of systems. There was also a glut of games. And yes, if you kept up with the latest and greatest in the video game media world, you might know like which games were going to be worth a shit. But that was 11 people in 1982.
Yeah, and Noah was two of them. So
I was only one of them. One. Hello. But more often, though, games were just being bought by grandmas who like heard little Timmy likes the Atari. Right, and for every good game that Activision, Atari, or Magic was putting out, there were 38 shit games that Bob's Video Game Programs and Massage Services were on.
Oh, Grandma! A jigsaw puzzle video game. You shouldn't have. You really shouldn't
I
have.
love it so much. I want to frame the receipt, Grandma. Can I have it? Receipt? Can I have it? Frame it.
All right, so to be fair to Bob's Video Game Programs and Massage Services,
okay, this is the first time in this essay I've wanted to reach for my wallet.
but like, so not all the really awful games were coming from third-party vendors. I mean, at one point, Atari did like Rubik's Cube, the video game.
What?
Wherein you solve a Rubik's Cube,
Okay.
and then they sold it for way more than a Rubik's Cube cost.
That's amazing.
They made a Rubik's square. They turned it into a square.
Yes,
Wow.
well, right, yes, exactly. It wasn't three-dimensional, yeah. And by the way, if you think they were just counting on like the name Rubik's Cube to sell it, I should point out that they originally released it in 1982 as Atari Video Cube and didn't manage to secure the licensing until 1984.
Jesus.
Okay, though, to be fair, I just looked it up, and a copy of Madden is about $60, and an actual football costs about $15. Though, to also be fair, a copy of Grand Theft Auto is $30, and Kyle Rittenhouse's bail is $2 million. So I don't know if we should draw these comparisons.
No,
It
hold on.
feels-
Let's think it out. So the game WWE 2K, $60, right? Spandex pants, $30. And Chris Benoit's family. You know what? Never mind.
Holy shit.
Oh.
And okay,
How
So
did you
kill
make
his
that
family.
darker? How did you make that darker?
God damn it.
all right, so of course, it's impossible to talk about terrible 1982 Atari 2600 games without mentioning the notoriously awful Pac-Man port. Okay, so for 2 years, Pac-Man had been dominating the arcades. It was the most beloved video game ever made. It remains the de facto symbol of the entire fucking decade, right? And yet, for 2 years, there was no home version of it. But eventually, Atari ironed out the rights with the game's Japanese creator Namco and finally released in March of 1982 a home port of Pac-Man. And after waiting for 2 goddamn years and finding out that the fucking thing was going to be released the same time as your goddamn birthday and for even getting a goddamn present on the fucking day because you were waiting until the store had the Atari cartridge that your dad was probably going to buy any fucking way, Atari released the most half-ass attempt at Pac-Man that you could imagine.
Really did. Atari Pac-Man didn't need dots, he ate dashes, and I'm not even kidding. They were dashes.
What?
Yep,
They were dashes.
exactly.
He couldn't get the rights to dots.
It's so much worse than that. Noah's going to go into it, I'm sure. So
It's so big. Okay, so here's the biggest problem. They gave the programmer a whopping 5 weeks to program the game, which is insane given the technical limitations of the system. But even worse, Atari kind of overlearned their lesson after their best programmers ran off and founded Activision. So they offered this dude a royalty, but it wasn't based on how many copies were sold. It was based on how many were made.
what?
Yeah, and Atari was so sure that this game was going to be a smash hit that they made 1.2 million copies. Even though, and this is true, there were only 1 million Atari 2600 system owners. They just assumed it was going to be so fucking popular that at least 200,000 people were going to rush out to buy a system so that they could buy the Pac-Man game.
Or some people would buy 2 cartridges so they could play one while their friend was blowing the other one, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Also, no, that's not fair. Cyberpunk 2077 was also going to release for the system any day. So
Any day.
it's going to come out.
All right, so, but instead of being the killer app that Space Invaders was, Atari's Pac-Man was a fucking dud, right? Some of it was just that the graphics were shit. Pac-Man ate wafers. That's what they called it in the instruction. Wafers, they called them. It looked like somebody had just punched him in the lip. He faced right or left. And when you went up and down, he would still face to the left or something.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't looking where he was going. And as annoying as all that was, players probably would have gotten over it if the gameplay was at least true to the arcade version or close, but it wasn't. Right, the ghost didn't act the same. The maze was wrong and didn't make any fucking sense. The cutscenes were missing. The sound effects were brutal to listen to.
So bad.
It was a horrible. It's like a failed clone abomination that would have begged the real Pac-Man to kill it if he ever happened along.
Okay, that's rather a lot. Guys, can we all promise not to bring up the Pac-Man cartoon before Noah's blood pressure normalizes? I don't want him.
No, the sounds on that Pac-Man thing, on that Pac-Man game, it seriously sounds like your computer crashing every time he eats a dot. It's the worst sound in the world.
It's haunted my
It's so
nightmares since
bad.
1984.
It's so bad.
I looked it up. I guess maybe I didn't play enough Atari.
It was so bad. But
I like
as
that
bad
they
as-
invented strafing, apparently.
Yeah, they did. They did. It's invented strafing.
That's a big deal. GoldenEye, strafing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, but so as bad as Pac-Man was, it was nowhere near the flop of E.T., a game so bad it is often cited as the worst video game of all time.
And possibly the most overrated movie of all time. I fucking hate that movie. That was not a good movie. After Star Wars, that's the most overrated movie of all time.
As much as I loved it, it absolutely does not hold up even a little bit. It's so hard to watch. Yeah, I'm actually with you. I loved that movie as a kid, but yeah, no. Okay, so to be clear, E.T. does not deserve the title of the worst video game of all time, but it probably is the worst video game that, like, anyone ever looked forward to playing.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad, but it isn't the King James Bible for Game Boy. Thanks, Grandma. Thank you. Thank you.
What is the new revised standard version, you stupid bitch?
God, now I want to do an essay on Wisdom Tree games, but I won't. Okay.
Yeah.
So the English language doesn't really have words to describe how disappointing the E.T. video game is, and for good reason, right? Human beings should not be trusted with anything that powerful. But suffice to say, it was shit. It is literally impossible to enjoy, even ironically. It consists of walking around for like 1 or fewer seconds before you fall into a stupid fucking hole, and then just when you're getting out of the fucking hole, you fall back in the same fucking hole
Yep,
you're already in.
That's right.
Were there
That's
holes
right.
in the movie?
Yep.
Is that a thing?
No,
in the movie?
That's exactly how that game is.
and if your head
Yep.
touched the hole, you fell in.
it.
It's so
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
the worst.
And just when you were thinking, what the fuck is going on? Some dude would show up and carry you away and the game is over and you lost and fuck you. that was the entire goddamn experience.
So
It sounds a lot like 2020, the video game, when you say it like that.
Yeah, and at the end of the game, when you lost, Rudy Giuliani shows up to sue you. It's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. The game was rigged by aliens.
it was so bad they actually needed to call 4 seasons total.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler alert.
That was helpful to them.
I should point out, by the way, that this is not just like my embittered experience with it. Reviewers at the time even called it monotonous, convoluted, and inane. Even by 1984, it was ranked as the second worst Atari game of all time. It has enjoyed a spot at or near the top of worst games ever lists ever since.
Yeah, and for those of you wondering how bad a game has to be to make that list, 2 others on that list from a casual Google are rape themed.
Yep.
So
Yes, actually.
Yep.
Yes.
What? Shit.
Yep.
Yes.
Holy shit.
I'm not doing that essay either. So, all right. Now, to his credit, the guy who programmed this game was a fucking genius. Howard Scott Warshaw was the creator of Yar's Revenge, which is a strong contender for best game on the 2600. It's not. It's a good one. But it's a strong contender. And already he had handled a major movie property in his Raiders of the Lost Ark game, it's no Yar's Revenge, but it's still a pretty fun game, even with the bizarre 2 joystick inventory nonsense. It just
let it go, Noah. He's dead. Everyone involved is dead.
no, he's not dead. He's still alive.
No, he's dead.
No, he's not.
He's dead now.
All right, but so like with ET, they gave Shaw all of 23 goddamn minutes to program the fucking thing. Having totally failed to learn their goddamn lesson about Pac-Man, they gave him less than 5 weeks to complete development. And to be honest, his concept was shit, right? Like this game was like, even if they'd given him a year to work on it, it still would have been a shitty game. Just probably not a historically shitty game.
Yeah, if they gave him a year, you could have made it over that first hole.
Yeah. Right.
And with enough tequila, you could make it to the second hole.
All right. All right. So that made for 2 high publicity flops in 1 year for Atari. They poured money into marketing on both of them, and though they sold more than 1 million copies of both games, they still wound up with huge stockpiles of unsold and returned cartridges that quickly started collecting dust. Now, it doesn't really take long for Atari to decide that they don't want to pay to warehouse those anymore, so they quietly took
for a guy to blow the dust out. Just walking up and down the warehouse. Dust through the shirt. Okay.
All right, so they quietly load up several truckloads of unsold merchandise, and they take them to a landfill near Alamogordo, New Mexico, and buried them. They meant to do this quietly, but it wound up being reported in the New York Times, which is the opposite of quiet. So, of course, look, a shitty Pac-Man port and a shittier ET game were not enough to do in the company, right? Like, I mean, hell, it technically still exists now, but it would continue releasing ever sadder consoles until the mid-90s. But their failures were major contributors to the larger video game crash of 1983 that wiped out a ton of smaller companies, and their high-profile failures, combined with the increasing prevalence of home computers, that's what we called them back then, people, home computers, because people didn't think that belonged in your home. Anyway, that led a lot of industry observers to doubt that there was any real future in the dedicated video game console, a characteristic that PC gamers maintain to this day.
Yeah, PC Master Race. Ooh, ooh.
Really?
Eli.
You're a big PC fan? You have a 2005 MacBook, and the only game you own is Stardew Valley. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
All right, so
You own Firewire and Monster Cables. What are you talking about?
I can hear the difference.
okay, so officially, Atari denied the infamous game burial for a long fucking time. For decades, the whole idea kind of like surfed the edge of urban legend until eventually a couple of documentarians got permission to dig up the site and prove once and for all whether or not the shit was down there. And sure enough, between a layer of concrete that Atari had poured to cover their shame
Jesus.
Apparently, thousands upon thousands of unsold games were discovered.
They made recovering their games harder than playing them, and that's saying something. That is.
I was kind of hoping for like a Capone's vault moment, though, like where they're just digging through all the trash and garbage, just breaking through and breathlessly finding more garbage.
That's what you got, man. You haven't played E.T. is the problem. You don't understand.
True.
That is what happened. So that documentary about a video game company biting off more than it could chew and suffering from an embarrassing failure was originally produced by Xbox Entertainment Studios. But unfortunately, they went out of business before they could finish editing it, so it was eventually distributed by somebody else.
And Noah, if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
It's amazing that I've ever been late.
It is amazing. Are you ready for the quiz?
Sure, why not?
All right, Noah. Which of the following items was dealt with the same way as E.T. the video game extra cartridges? A. The Chernobyl reactor core.
Oh, God. True. I will stop you right there because if there's more answers, they're just going to depress me more. We'll go with A.
That is correct. Literally A. Concrete over the top, just like the Chernobyl reactor core.
All right, Noah. I Googled this ET game and I watched someone on YouTube play it to get an idea of what we are dealing with here. What one simple improvement would make playing this game more fun? A. Fetal alcohol syndrome.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Good Lord.
I need there to be a B.
Yeah.
I'd really like a B.
Yeah, he can put whatever he wants in there. It's going to wind up on the editing floor, so it doesn't matter.
I'll go
Say
with
whatever he
B
wants.
then.
All right, Noah.
Marginally better.
Noah, what video game also spent a lot of time underground? A. Frogger. B. Spade Runner. C. Deus Excavator. Or D. Mole Position.
All right. Well, the retro gaming theme, it's got to be A or D. I'm going to go D, Mole
It
Position.
is Mole Position. Congratulations.
All right. Awesome.
Frogger. All right, Noah. What could Atari have done to make E.T. a smash hit? A. Called it a Souls-like so that everyone would insist that it was brilliant falling in those holes over and over again. I love it. B. Take a neutral stance on the Chinese government murdering protesters.
Oh, shit.
C. Same company. Treat its female employees like garbage and then play the victim whenever anyone mentions
Oh my
it.
gosh.
Yeah, weird.
Or D. Let the studio behind No Man's Sky make the trailer.
All right, obviously it's D, because come on, like as bad as E.T. was, it's still better than...
Ooh, I'm afraid it is A. Souls-like genre.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
God damn it, I was so close.
That's right. And that means next week, it's Tom's turn to write an essay.
All right. Well, for Tom, Heath, Eli, and Noah, I'm Cecil. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and by then, Tom will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can listen to all the other shows we produce, like The Scathing Atheist, The Skeptocrat, God Awful Movies, D&D Minus, Cognitive Dissonance, or you could watch my cooking show, seasoned liberally on YouTube.
Yes,
And if
love that show.
And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes. Be sure to check out citationpod.com.
And then the Italian guy throws his hat on their heads so he can control them.
Dude, you seriously, you got to get back on your medication.
Dinosaur
okay?
slave.
No.